Hello, my name is Angela Alexander. I am the director and head minister of Muddy Boots Ministry. I'm going to show you this, my website for anybody who is interested in learning more about the programs I offer. We do nature programs for kids where we learn all about trees, leaves, wild edible plants, gardening, and kids just get muddy, just spend their time outdoors, away from screens. So we have a lot of programs that we offer during the summer and also during the school year. So for anybody who would like to check that out, it's moonshine333.wixsite.com/muddyboots hyphen no, hyphen boots. And that is the website for anybody who would like to see that. We also have a Facebook page if anybody would be interested in looking at it. Um, I put lots of recipes on here. I plan on putting recipes on my website as well. So for anybody who is interested, you can go and check those things out. All right, let's get started on our presentation about winter sewing, if I can figure this out. All right, so I'm going to give a presentation on, or a sermon on winter sewing. Winter sewing, wild nutrition, and my path back to local food. How do I go back? Does it let me go back? Oh, it does. When most people think about growing food, they picture tidy garden beds, grow lights, and plastic seed trays on windowsills. For me, however, growing food has become something much deeper. It's not about gardening, just about gardening. It's about reconnecting with nature's wisdom, reclaiming independence, and feeding my family with what's already around us. Over the years, I've poured a lot of energy into maintaining three or more gardens, trying to grow food through every season. But with six people in a small house, plus other children I care for, starting seeds indoors quickly became overwhelming and exhausting. I even invested in a greenhouse thinking it would solve the problem, only to discover it demanded heat, attention, and constant upkeep. That's when I discovered winter sewing, and everything changed. Winter sewing is about partnering with seasons, not struggling against them. In the same way, our backyards are filled with plants that thrive without our effort. Wild greens like dandelion, lamb's quarters, nettles, and purslane, these so-called weeds, are often more nutrient dense than the vegetables in grocery stores. Yet they grow exactly where the soil and conditions suit them best. Both winter sowing and wild plants teach us that producing food doesn't require control. It requires awareness, patience, and a willingness to work with nature's rhythms. So, what is winter sowing? Winter sowing is a method of planting seeds outdoors in winter using recycled containers, milk jugs, juice bottles, or clean bins instead of growing under lights inside. The seeds are sown in soil placed outdoors and exposed to natural cycles of freezing, thawing, snow, and rain. The containers protect the seeds while letting in light and moisture. When the weather warms, the seeds germinate naturally at the right time. So I've been doing gardening and planting seeds indoors for the past 12 years, and it always seems like a chore. I have the tiniest house. I always have little children in my home, so it's constantly being just destroyed, and I need to have gates and things surrounding my seedlings. So I had limited space. I had animals like the kids, not animals like dogs and kids knocking my plants over. I never had enough light. I'd have to be buying all these grow lights. And for some reason, even if I mean my plants, my sometimes my seedlings would grow leggy, like they weren't getting enough light. Um, some would just dry out because I would forget to water them. I'd have to have my calendar going so I could start my plants either 12 weeks early before the last frost or 8 weeks before the last frost. It was more work than I wanted. And I wanted to be able to have just, constant food coming in. And it was a lot of work because I'd plant about 40 tomato plants. It's not like I just had a couple tomato plants. I had like 40 tomato plants. So it was just a lot of work. And I did it every year and I complained, but I did it. So when I came across winter sowing, this year actually, it was. I just wish that I had found out about it sooner. So winter sowing, it's low maintenance. Your plants are hardier. They grow stronger since they've been outdoors and all the outdoor conditions. You can start early. You don't have to start all at once. You can kind of spread it out throughout the weeks or the months. I rarely had to water the containers. I pretty much would just put them out there and completely forget about them. You don't have to buy any lights, anything fancy. You can use recycled materials. You don't have to harden off. That was one of the hardest things for me was bringing my tomato plants or some of my herbs or pepper plants to harden off so that I didn't kill them when they changed from indoors to outdoors. So I'd have be carrying because sometimes I'd start my plants too soon and I'd have tomato plants in 5-gallon buckets in my living room and I'd be carrying them outdoors and then bringing them in at night, which was kind of a pain in the butt. So low maintenance, no grow lights, didn't take up any space in my house, and didn't have to wait till the last minute sometimes. Winter sowing in the rhythm of nature. What makes winter sowing so powerful isn't just the ease or low cost, it's the way it reconnects us with the cycles of the natural world. Instead of forcing growth under artificial lights or controlled conditions, we're trusting the earth's timing. Seeds sprout not because we tell them to, but because nature signals its time. In many ways, this mirrors something we've forgotten. Nature already provides. All around us are edible and medicinal plants, nettles, dandelions, lamb quarters, plantain, chickweed, that were once foraged as staple foods. Yet today we pass them in favor of store-bought vegetables. We pay for nutrition that the land offers freely. So Trudy Davidoff, she is the woman that started the whole idea of winter sewing. She has a website and everything is free. She didn't want to make any money off of this idea. She wanted it to be known and available for everyone. So she started a website called wintersown.org. If anybody wants to go check that out, you can. It gives her whole approach, a whole bunch of ideas on how to winter sow and just a bunch of tips. So it's a super helpful site. I also found there's winter sowers on Facebook. Those are super helpful web pages as well, to get more information. Materials needed for winter sowing. You need a clear or translucent containers with lids. So I used some milk jugs. I also had just plastic totes that you could see through. Takeout containers. You need potting soil, well-draining sterile mix, duct tape or package tape, a knife or scissors for cutting, labels, and a permanent marker. And you need your seeds. How winter sowing works. So winter sowing for hardy annuals and perennials, you can start planting those literally anytime on or after the winter solstice. So like you can start planting your stuff outside or in your containers and putting them outside starting December 21st, which is super helpful for anybody who wants to start their flowers or hardy perennials and hardy annuals. Prepare your container. So um, you can cut your container in half so that you can have a hinge on it. Which I'll get into more about containers on the next few slides. Use a translucent container that can hold 3 to 4 inches of potting soil and headroom for seedlings to grow about 2 inches or more. It's good and translucent enough to let light in. The milk jugs, I think, work perfect because it has a lot of headspace and you can take the top off if you slice around the edge and make it have a hinge. Drainage holes, I just used a drilled a whole bunch of holes in the bottom of my containers. You fill the um, container with moist potting mix. You're gonna water the crap out of it. If your container is too wet after watering, add more drainage holes. You want to make sure that the water, the snow, the rain can pour in and not cause your containers to overflow. You want them to be able to go right through. Then you plant your seeds. Start with perennials that need like cold stratification and move on to hardy annuals and then the tender annuals um, for flowers, vegetables. Then you close or put the top on securely. If you're using the hinge form on your milk jugs, you're going to just tape around the whole um, um, container. Make ventilation holes on the top so that snow and rain can get in. If you're using jugs or bottles, then you can just keep the cap off. You don't even need to put a lid on. Label your containers, permanent marker or a plant tag inside because sometimes the outside labels fade with the sun and the weather conditions. Put outside immediately. Anywhere they can get light, leave them outside in the snow and the rain and freezing temperatures. You can literally put them out there and completely forget about them until the weather starts to warm. Come spring, the seeds will germinate at the perfect time, and then you transplant them into your garden. What type of containers to use? So on the left, you can see someone just used milk jugs. I find milk jugs work amazing, but if you don't buy milk or you don't have milk jugs available, then use anything. I also have all the way on the right, I used yogurt containers, even though they aren't clear or translucent around the sides. I put plastic wrap over the top. So I cut a ring and just put the plastic wrap over the top and poked holes in the top, and that worked perfectly. That's actually where I planted my pepper plants this year. So in this middle section, you can see where you cut almost all the way through and you leave this little part to hinge. That way you fill this part with soil and then you can tape the rest down and leave it to get snowed and rained on. And then you make your drainage holes. I used a drill. This is the bottom of a milk jug. Pretty simple. So fill with potting soil. So any potting soil or potting mix soil will work. Mixes with soil for potting or soilless mixes both work fine and are formulated for growing in containers. Trudy does not recommend using seed starting mix. Um, Indoor potting mix should not be used, and weed free is not recommended because it will prevent germination of your seeds. And garden soil and topsoil is not recommended. So here's a few examples of some potting mix that Trudy does recommend. Just all-purpose potting soil. Um, any of these do. 2 cubic foot bag of potting soil will make about 20-gallon jugs. So, can figure that. So after you fill with potting soil, you're going to cover and seal the containers. Make sure sunshine, rain, snow can get in through the top and then cover like a mini greenhouse. So this woman used all her just regular potting um, containers and then covered the whole thing with plastic wrap. I cannot stand plastic wrap, so I would not be using this, but she is. Right? Then you're going to label your containers. Sun, rain will make marker fade, so make sure you write it where it will not wear off. I put some labels inside, but I used numbers. I put like a whole bunch of numbers all around the outside. Like if I did one, I'd put one at the bottom, one on the side, one all over the place. And then inside I had a list with the numbers and then the plants that were in each, or the seeds that were in each thing. And that made it easier for me instead of having to write the whole word. Just having the numbers that line up with the plant made it a lot easier. Then you place your containers outdoors. Your winter sowing containers need to experience the winter temperature fluctuations and the daylight hours lengthening. They need to be out where the containers can be snowed on, rained on, and receive moisture from nature. They should not be placed under roof eaves, on a covered porch, or be placed against a building. They should be protected from snow shovels, snow blowers, snow plows, sleds, dogs, or anything else that may damage your containers. Here's some tips. The container should have enough light on all sides to germinate seeds the container should have enough light on all sides to germinate seeds, so that is not a priority here. What you do need to do is place the containers where they're going to be safe. Should winter sown containers be kept in the shade or the sun? In the wintertime, it doesn't matter because the winter sunlight is weak. But as the sunlight gets stronger and warmer in spring, you may want to move your containers to an area that does not get sun all day long. The more sunlight they get, the more water they will need. Keep your potting soil moist. If your soil is not frozen, winter sowing, if it's not frozen. So if it's frozen, you know that it's moist enough because it's got water in there, so it's frozen. Winter sowing is a moist germination method, and we need to keep our soil moist. If it is frozen, you do not need to water. When the temperatures warm up above 40 degrees, that is when you want to keep the potting soil moist. Keep it really wet. You want it to be very wet. When the weather is above freezing and the soil container has thawed, go outside and look for condensation beads attached to the inside of the cover. That is a good indication that there is moisture in the soil. So after all that, when the springtime has come, you're going to need to figure out how to care for the seedlings and how to transplant. So you keep the containers watered if you don't have rain. Winter sown seeds are really tough. They can handle the elements, rain, snow, frost. I remember when my tomato plants and pepper plants just started popping up and it was getting freezing. And I had the container lid off and I'd go back out and they were completely fine. Yet the plants that I had also started indoors seemed like they weren't even as strong and had as many leaves as the ones that I had planted that I had winter sown. So once you have germination and the temperatures are rising above 50 degrees or so, you have to prevent the seedlings from overheating and frying inside their containers. So you have two options. When the temp gets above 50, you can open up the containers or remove the cover or top half of your jug during the heat of the day and close them back up for cool nights. Or you can move them to a morning sun location where the sun is weakest and make more ventilation holes. I chose to just take the lid on and off, which probably this year I'm probably going to make it just move it to a place where it just gets morning sun. When temperatures are consistently 50 or above, including at night, certainly you can leave your containers uncovered, opened if all your seeds have sprouted. When seedlings have two sets of real leaves or one are 1 to 2 inches tall, it's time to transplant them as a hunk of seedlings or individual seedlings. So when transplanting, water your container and let them drain, and you want to remove the top of the container if you're still using it, and then push the bottom of the container to remove the seedlings. Lay them on the ground and cut the seedlings into brownie-sized squares and plant them into your garden. If you'd like, you can fertilize with a quarter strength of fertilizer of your choice if you were using fertilizer. So these are some of the plants that I planted this past winter. I have a bunch of my flowers. These are my flowers, and then my cucumbers. These containers I really would not recommend. As you can see, they're already popping out at the top. They were not that deep. Um, I would use something that was much deeper. You can also look online to see other ideas of containers you could use. So here's some flowers that you can winter sow in the Northeast. The perennials that come back year after year. These would be your hardy ones. You can start planting these in December. Then you have hardy annuals. They complete their life cycle in one season, but they tolerate the cold well. So we got bachelor buttons and calendula, snapdragons. And then we have your biennials. They grow foliage the first year, bloom the second year. Foxglove, hollyhock, all those. So when to sow? Perennials, the hardy ones you can sow January, February, and some in December. Hardy annuals, January through March. And then our biennials, January through February, March. I don't know why I wrote January, February, it'd be March too. Rule of thumb, perennials, biennials, and hardy annuals that like cold stratification, you can sow December through February. And then the ones that are slightly tender, hardy annuals, I would wait a little bit until, wait until like February or March. Winter sowing vegetables. Winter sowing is great for starting veggies. If you've had problems with planting vegetable seeds, such as the seeds getting eaten by birds or critters, or they either dry up or rot in the soil, or bugs eat them, or there's insufficient germination for whatever reason, try winter sowing your vegetables. While traditional winter sowing focuses on cold, hardy crops, you can winter sow warm weather vegetables, but only later in the season. So once the risk of deep freezing has mostly passed, typically mid-March to early April in the Northeast, you can plant your tender annuals. All right, here is a whole bunch of vegetables that you can winter sow. It's like peppers and Swiss chard, tomatoes, zucchinis. I usually plant my zucchinis right in the ground, but I do find that the bugs get to them sometimes. I'm still working on that, even though I'm doing companion planting and and other tips that I've read. Um, I still have problems. So this year, the things that I usually plant right into the ground, I'm gonna attempt with winter sowing this year, and I will let you all know how that goes. This year, I actually only did a whole bunch of flowers, and I did tomatoes and peppers this year, and I have never had so many tomatoes and peppers. It it was it was a really good year. So warm weather vegetables for late winter sowing. So what did I write? Wilt. While true cold hardy seeds benefit from winter sowing's full exposure, tender seeds need a gentler approach. So tomatoes, peppers, eggplants are typically started indoors, but you can winter sow them later in the season. So mid to late March or later when the temperature begins to moderate. So these seeds won't germinate until it's warm enough. So you can put them out there and nothing will happen until the temperature reaches inside that container about 65 to 75 degrees. So sowing too early just exposes them to rot and freeze, and just damage. Cucumber, zucchini, summer squash, winter squash, pumpkins, melons. These seeds germinate quickly in warm soil and can be winter sown just before your last frost, so early to mid-April in the Northeast. These seedlings hate being root bound, so don't sow too early. Plant them soon after sprouting. So, final tip on warm weather crops. For all warm weather crops, the soil inside your winter sowing container should be warming during the day and not freezing solid at night. So, you might have freezing temperatures, but your container should not be freezing solid by the time you sow. Cool season vegetables, best for winter sowing. So we have spinach. You can sow December through February, lettuce, kale, arugula, Swiss chard, broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, carrots, beets, radishes. All of these can be winter sown early on. You don't have to cram it all in. You can do a week, you sow one, or every other day you can sow one. It can take a you can just take your time on it. You're not rushing to get everything in. And since you're not doing it indoors, you have all the space that you need. All right, so this plant right here. Last winter, I planted spinach in a container, and to my surprise, a little lamb's quarter plant popped up alongside it. That unexpected visitor was the spark that began my journey of weaving more wild edibles into my garden and learning to reconnect with nature's own timing. So this year, I plan on having more wild edibles planted, winter sown, in my gardens. I usually, when I'm weeding the gardens or just, planting my things, I always have a hard time ripping things out. Like I'm like, this is a dandelion, I like this, and I don't want to get rid of it, but when you're planting your vegetables, you sometimes you just have to rip things up that you don't want to. So this year, I plan on making designated places and also including more wild edibles into my garden instead of just the ones that I grow usually. So, wild plants as nature's superfoods. Many of the most nutrient-dense plants aren't cultivated at all, but freely offered by nature. Dandelion, lamb's quarters, nettles, purslane are super high in vitamins, and I mean, not most of the time, but a lot of people overlook them. Dandelion is high in vitamin A, K, and minerals like calcium. Lamb's quarters is called wild spinach, which is weird that when I found it, it was with my spinach. And that's kind of when I made that connection, like lamb's quarter has more nutrients than the spinach that I'm planting. And nature and earth just, you know, sprouted it itself without any help from me. All right, so here's just, I made a chart on cultivated vegetables and their wild relative and the difference in nutrition. And as you can see, the wild relative has more nutrition and more vitamins and more healthy things for your body than cultivated vegetables. So, wild edibles are higher in vitamins and minerals. Wild plants often have more vitamin C, A, iron, magnesium, and calcium because they are grown in diverse, mineral-rich soils and haven't been bred for size or shelf life over nutrients. Wild plants produce protective compounds, flavonoids, polyphenols, I don't know how to say it, antioxidants to survive pests, UV light, and stress. These compounds are often anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial, and protective for your heart and your brain. Omega-3s are found in wild greens like purslane. They're super rich in omega-3 fatty acids, which are rare in cultivated vegetables. Wild edibles have stronger flavor. So that was one of the reasons why people started cultivating vegetables is because they were less bitter. They wanted to make things that had more flavor, weren't so bitter, but also and had better shelf life. So they were taking away the nutrients, the vitamins that the wild greens have because they have higher protective compounds. Um, so your choice, flavor or nutrition. So, store dependency versus wild abundance. We live in a world where it's normal to buy vegetables that have traveled thousands of miles, even while wild, edible plants grow in our own backyard. Dandelion, plantain, chickweed, purslane, these weeds were once medicine and food for generations. Now we pull them out while buying bagged greens from the store and planting a selectively bred vegetable with a better shelf life and less nutrients. Mostly this was mostly this was done for flavor. Nature gives us exactly what we need when we need it. Winter sowing reflects that. Just as seeds sprout when conditions are right, wild plants emerge in the seasons they're most useful. Lamb's quarter appear when the body craves minerals. Nettles rise in the spring to cleanse and strengthen. These aren't accidents, they're part of a deeper intelligence in nature that many of us have forgotten. Rethinking our relationship with food. So, taken together, winter sowing and wild edible plants invite us to rethink how we grow food. Modern gardening often emphasizes schedules, soil management, and pest control, but these examples show that abundance can come from working with nature, not against it. This perspective also changes how we see weeds. Instead of nuisances, they can be gifts, nutrient-rich foods that thrive where conditions suit them. Just as winter-sown seeds know when to sprout, wild plants show us that the earth knows when to grow, what to grow. Both teach us what a humble, respectful partnership with nature can yield nourishment, abundance, and beauty without constant intervention. So while winter sowing your tomatoes and herbs, you can also tuck in native wildflowers or edibles as you tend to your containers. You may begin to notice other plants quietly offering themselves just beyond your garden beds. That kind of awareness reshapes not only how you garden, but how you eat and how you welcome the so-called weeds around you. Winter sowing gave me back time, energy, and a sense of connection. It helped me rediscover gardening as a partnership with the earth, no longer a battle with the seasons or the limits of space. It invited me to trust nature's rhythms and, in return, reminded me how generously the land provides. If you've ever struggled with seed starting indoors or felt confined by limited space, winter sowing is worth trying. You may discover, as I did, that it grows more than plants. It cultivates patience, presence, and the simple truth that nourishment was always meant to be close at hand. So let's see if I can. So I was wanted to do a challenge. I was talking to Jordan about this, I think it was last year. I wanted to do a challenge where for 3 months, I wanted to go on a diet of where I only ate foraged, grown, raised, or sourced locally food. No box foods. I didn't want to go to the grocery store. Only things that were local and things that I picked and did myself. It's not about health, it's about connection. It's about eating seasonally, supporting local systems, and honoring the land we live on. It's also about showing that another way of living is not only possible, but it's better. I've been planning on doing this for a while, and I plan to maybe start in the spring next year. So if there's anybody who is interested in joining me, you can email me at muddybootsministry.com, or just kidding, muddybootsministry@yahoo.com. Um, so if anybody would like to join me on that challenge, or if you have any questions about winter sewing, or if you have any questions about my program, you can email me at muddybootsministry@yahoo.com. Hope you all enjoyed and have a wonderful